Good afternoon. Welcome to today's CI Tools webinar. My name is Josh Osborne and I'm the Product Manager for the CI Tools here at Central Innovation. And this is our weekly webinar where we go over frequently asked questions about the CI Tools. We sometimes cover new features in the tools, or maybe features that you didn't hear about somehow. And sometimes we also go over how to use tools from scratch, either for beginners or for advanced users. This week we're going to be looking at the CI Select add-on in particular. And I'm going to be working in ArchiCAD 27. Quite a few of the things that we'll be looking at today are actually brand new in ArchiCAD 27 only. So if you're using 26, some of these functions will be available, but not all of them. There was an update for the Select add-on that came out a couple of weeks ago now, which has the functions that I'm going to show today. I have actually showed this in a webinar last year sometime, so you might remember it from there, but it's actually released now and ready to be used. But before we get started, just quickly, if you have any questions about anything that we're going to be looking at today, or just about the CI tools in general, please just enter those in the chat as we go. I'll check on that every 10 minutes or so and just see if anything has come up, and then I'll either answer those online or cover them off with you afterwards, or in a future version of a webinar if the topic is sort of larger than I can do while we're online today. But yeah, so the CI Select add-on, this add-on is available for New Zealand and Australian Select customers, hence the name, and it's also available for CI Tools Premium customers. So if you're a premium subscriber anywhere in the world, you also have access to the Select add-on, and it just lives up in the CI Tools menu under CI Select. So we're going to look at a bunch of the things that it can do. I'll show you some of the new stuff first, and then we'll go over some of the functions that were already there that maybe you didn't know about or had forgotten about. First of all, what I'm going to do is, as I say, cover off the new things. So we'll look at the G4, G7 table and the light and ventilation table. They both do very similar things. As you may know, there's already a select object for both of these. There's a table object for doing both of these things, and the way that it works at the moment is you place the object and then you go through and put in all of the settings that you want it to show for various things. And then it will display a table showing the values that you want it to. And essentially what we have done in this update of the Select add-on is we have automated that process. So it will go through your project, it will find all of your windows and doors by zones, and then it will automatically populate the table for you. So you just, instead of going through all the other process, you just come in here, go to CI Select, calculate the table, click where you want to place it. Whoops, that was a little bit close. And then you can see that it has brought in all of the data. So you can see the room name is listing the names of my zones. You can see those there. So living, kitchen, bathroom, etc. These are all listed here. And then all of the windows and doors that are inside those zones are included in this schedule, and the calculation values are shown for all of those. So it just makes the process of getting this placed nice and easy. Obviously, you can still go into the object settings and do whatever you like with it there. So you can see if you select the individual elements from here, you can modify those manually. So those are imported by the tool when you run that command, but you can go in here and override them if you needed to. So if for some reason you know that D002 needs to have an overridden glazing area, maybe it's a door that you couldn't quite model the way that you wanted to somehow, or something like that. In this case, it looks like there's no glazing on it. For instance, you might want to come in here and tell it that it has glazing anyway. So you can come in here and override those values still as normal, but the tool will automatically bring in all of the data for you. So you can do that, and then you can also go through and modify all of the other parts of the table as well. So you can modify the way that the zones are imported, and you can see the floor areas that they've brought in there, and the amount of elements that are in each part. So you can see this one's got 2 doors and windows, and it's referencing those 2 particular doors and windows. You can add in additional ventilation and that sort of thing as well. Display options just control what you're actually seeing on the table there. So you can turn those on or off depending on what you want. And the attributes just set the pens and line types and that sort of thing. for the table. So you can still work with it normally once it's already placed, just as you would have before having this option. It just makes it so that you don't have to fill in everything first, which is nice. Following on a similar vein to that, we also have an updated, or basically the same sort of thing for the document transmittal form. So again, the document transmittal form, you may already use this. One of these sort of speed bumps, let's say, for the document transmittal form is that you have to create a schedule for all of your transmittals. You have to export that schedule, and then in the object you have to reference the file that you exported to import the actual data for the transmittals, and this just gets rid of that whole thing. You don't have to have a schedule that includes everything. You don't have to import and export anything at all. You just choose this menu option, choose the settings for it. We'll leave it as default for now. Click OK and then place it. This one I've put on the wrong story. There we go. So you can see it's placed a transmittal form and the data is already there. We didn't have to do anything to get that. And if we make changes, so if I go in here and let's add a new transmittal, design 2, something like that, add some layouts to it. It's going to complain because I'm adding things that haven't had any changes, but that's fine. Yep, we'll say OK for that. Then we just select our place transmittal, go back to CI select and choose this option again, so place or update, and it will go through and it'll just add in that additional transmittal there, so you can see that is included the same as how it would have been before, and you can keep going for as many transmittals as you do in the course of the project. It still has all of the same settings as before. The object itself is the same. All we're doing now is that we've got an add-on that automates this whole process here. So you can still use the old process. As you can see here, you still have the same options. So you can come in here and you can refer to a specific file and then import it that way. That still works. But we've just shortcutted that whole part. And so now the only things you need to worry about are the actual settings for the table. So to choose what you actually want to display in the table itself, and then to go and choose how the layout of the table should work. So you've got your page sizings and that sort of thing, so that you can make it fit the right area, and then choose what you actually want to display in the table when you get there. And the attributes is just the pens and that sort of thing again as well. So that is the document transmittal. And yeah, they both work in similar ways to each other, in that they are just automatically doing a thing that you had to do manually before. The next thing that I wanted to show you, and this is again another thing that is using an existing object and just automating a bunch of stuff to do with it, and in this case it is with the wall frames object. So you might be familiar with the wall frames object. This one here, it allowed you to place a wall frame, and then once you placed it you could add in junctions and studs and openings and that sort of thing to make it look the way that you want. This is just automating that process as well. So all you need to do to make it work is you select the walls that you want to frame. I'll just select all of them for now so that you can see how that works. Go CI Tools, CI Select, place wall framing. It will show you the settings for the wall frame, so you can go through and modify those before adding. Obviously the junctions and studs and that sort of thing won't do anything at this stage, because those will be overwritten by the automatic placement. So there's not really any reason to go in here and add an opening or anything like that, because it's going to pick them up. But if you want to change how many top plates there are or the dimensions of your frames, you can do that. I'm going to stick this on the ArchiCAD layer so I can isolate it easily once we're done, but we just hit OK. It will take a few seconds to calculate, because it goes through and it checks the position and size of all the windows and that sort of thing, so it takes a little time to do. And then if we jump out to our 3D view, can turn off all of these, and you can see on our ArchiCAD layer we still have our wall frames showing. So this is a just change to this view, it's the coolest I think. just presents you with a very nice looking, I think, representation of your wall frames. Obviously this isn't something that is a requirement necessarily or anything like that, but it's a nice way of representing it, and it's a good way of being able to check to make sure that everything is done the way that you want it to. So you can see that it's automatically cut out the holes for the windows and doors. We've got a big corner door in there, so it's not doing any framing in there, but you can see the lintels have been placed and that sort of thing. So it just generates that nice 3D view for us. And then in our floor plan, you can also see that we have 2D representations of all the wall frames as well. And with these placed now, they will behave as the existing wall frame object already did. So you can see we've got extra nodes showing around intersections. We've got the holes for the opening showing and that sort of thing. But you can still manipulate these as normal. If I can actually select the wall frame, here we go. You can still manipulate these as you would normally, just by clicking and dragging things. So we can grab this junction here, we can make it bigger, we can move where the junction is and that sort of thing. All of the things that you could do before, you can still do now. One of the things to note about this one in particular is that it's not doing the same thing that the coverings tool does, whereby it automatically traces the shape. So for instance, if I came in here and I made this window much smaller, we still need to have our wall frames be updated. They're still placed as if the window hadn't moved at all. So you can see that our blocks are still at where they were before. The reason for that is simply because all the tool does is that it places the wall frames down on the walls as they were selected at the time. So it's a kind of a one-time operation. So if you want to then update your wall frames, the easiest way to do that is to just delete the frame and the wall that you updated, then select suspend groups, select the wall that you want to update, and just apply wall frames again. So we can just go back in here, place wall framing just on this wall this time, and you can see it places it with taking that window into consideration this time. So you can, and of course that will show in 3D as well if I can. Not sure which actual window I did now that I think of it. One of those anyway. I think it might be that one maybe. So yeah, so you can update them manually anytime you want by just deleting them and adding new ones. Otherwise you can basically ignore these. Once you go through, apply them, once you are sort of settled on the actual on the set out of things, and then away you go. You've got your wall frames, they're showing 3D, they're showing floor plan, you're all set. So those are the three newest functions that we've added to the CI Select add-on. If you're on 27, that's the only version they're available in currently. But if you are on 27, just go and install the latest version of the CI Select add-on and you will get those features added. I'm just going to pause for half a minute so that I can go and check on the chat, and then I will be back. Right. All right. Looks like we don't have any questions at this stage, so we'll keep going ahead. So the next thing I want to show you is the parts of the CI Select add-on that were already there, just in case you've forgotten about them or how they work or something like that. So there's a bunch of other functions that you will have seen up at the top here, which we can cover off as well. So we're going to start with the zone polygons, which is one of in fact, I think it's the oldest Select add-on function. This is the one that automates the display of zone polygons. So what I'm going to do is I will just where is the hotspot on that? There we go. So this zone is using residential and recreation. Zone stamp 07. Okay, so we're going to change to use the select zone stamp first. Okay, so it is this one here, zone stamp 1940. Hit OK. So all of our zones update that now, and you'll see that we get this nonsense numbers here. So what I'm going to do is, actually I won't select anything, I'll just run the command. So CI Tools, select update zone polygons. It tells me that none are selected, so should it do everything, which I do want it to do, and then it does do it. So if I now select my zone, just so you can see it more easily, so we get the actual zone stamp, which is showing the height of the ceiling, the name and ID of the zone, and then a sort of a rounded size for it, so 6 by 5, and then you can see around the edges of the zone we see the actual dimensions of each side. So you can see those running along each of these sides as it goes all the way around. So this is a nice nice zone stamp to be able to use, basically so that it automatically shows dimensions on all of the rooms that it's placed in, and you can see it did it with all of my other zones here as well. If we were to then resize the zone, so if we say, oops, why is that not resizing? Just move this over here. Go resize that. So you'll see that because I added a new edge by doing that, you can see we now have the two edges and they're both dimensioned as well. There are some certain cases where they may not automatically update. So certain functions that you might run where the zone doesn't automatically know that it has been changed. If you do ever find yourself in the spot where they have become out of sync, so you have edges of the zone that have moved but the stamp hasn't updated, just come back in here and choose to update them again, and it will go through and forcibly update all of those zone shapes and dimensions to make sure that that's all in sync. But most of the time, almost always, these will stay in sync once you first run that update. But yeah, there are a couple of specific operations, like if you're using a third-party add-on and it modifies the zones in some ways, that sort of thing can make this happen. But in general usage, you shouldn't have any problem with that, but the option is there if you need it. So that is the zone stamp. So just remember, the main thing there is to make sure that you're using the right zone for it, which is this one here, zone stamp 1940. That's part of the select library, that one. So it's a specific zone object that we made that gives you this functionality, and that is the only zone stamp that this function in the add-on works with. Obviously other zone stamps don't have that same measurement thing, so it wouldn't make sense for it to work any other way anyway. The next thing I want to look at is placing some objects automatically. So this is one that we made sort of aimed towards our, oops, I don't want that, and towards our customers who do landscaping work. And what this does is it allows you to basically automatically place a bunch of objects. The thing we're specifically thinking of in this case is plants. So I can go through and automatically place a bunch of plants for you. So what we're going to do is we're looking at my mesh here, which you can see in 3D, has some contours on it at different elevations. So there's a couple of contours there. And so what we can do is we can designate a planting area first by using the fill tool, if I can remember where that is. Here we go. So we'll draw a fill. So we'll say we want this area here to be planted. For some reason it's that shape, I don't know why. And then we select our fill and we say CI Tools, CI Select, place objects within selected fill polygons. And it will bring up the object selection settings at that point. And we can go through and select whatever it is that we want to place down. So obviously, as I was saying, this is mostly made for landscaping, so that's probably what you will want to do, but it can be used with literally any object that you want. So let's find a plant cutout. Let's just make a flax bush here. So we'll select this object, hit OK, and then it lets us choose how we want this to work. So when it is placing these, it's placing them according to a grid, and you can set what the grid is here. So the angle of the grid in proportion to the other nodes on the grid, and then the distance between nodes on the grid. So the distance between rows and columns on the grid. 600 is probably a bit small, so I'm just going to turn this up to 1500. I'm not sure how big the object was that I selected actually. Then we have an option to assign a random shift to this. So this is if you don't want them to be placed down in completely uniform rows and columns. You can add a bit of randomness to this. So we can come in here and we can say, let's add a shift of 300 and we'll add a rotation shift of 90 degrees as well. And then we'll hit OK. You can see it's telling us that it's going to apply to one fill. And no meshes are selected at the moment. We're going to hit OK. Going to tell me that it's going to place them on a different story because I had the wrong story selected in my object settings. But you can see that I now have a whole bunch of plants that are placed here. It's a little bit hard to tell because they are kind of chaotic messes, but they are all randomly rotated, so they aren't all exactly the same alignment, and they are not placed in a uniform grid either. So if I go back to my 3D now, hopefully that layer is actually on. It looks like it is. It's struggling to generate the 3D view. There we go. And now we have a bunch of these. Obviously these are set to always look at the camera, so the rotation is not there for that. But you can see it has placed a bunch of these objects, and unfortunately it has placed them buried in the ground, which we don't want. But our spacing is still not quite right. So what we're going to do is we're going to undo that. We'll keep the same fill, but this time we'll select the mesh and the fill. And we'll run the same command again. So we're going to place objects within the selected fill polygons. We'll stick with the same object for now so that you can see the same thing basically happening. You can see the only difference here is that we're now saying one fill and one mesh now. So it's detected we have the mesh selected, which is good. And I'm just going to turn the spacing up a bit to make that a bit more sensible. Hit OK. I'm just going to put them on the wrong story again. And you can see it's gone ahead and done that. So they are placed in with random rotations and that sort of thing. One of them is fitted right into the end here. And now if we go to our 3D and wait for that to generate, you should see them, unless something disastrous has gone wrong, they should, there we go, all be sitting up on the actual surface of the mesh that we had selected. This one here that didn't overlap with the mesh, that will just drop down to 0, but everything else will be placed on the surface of the mesh. So you can see these ones here have gone into the hole that a solid element operation is cut out for a path there, but the other ones are sitting on the actual top surface of the mesh, as you would expect. So there's a great way of placing a whole bunch of objects, particularly plants and that sort of thing, so that you can easily get that part done. And then the next part is that you will probably not want these all to be the same plant necessarily. So what we can do next is we can, let's just do a find and select so we can grab all of these. We want to add the name. Up. Okay, so we'll select all of those flags. We've got 37 of them. Go back to our CI Tools menu, CI Select, and you can see that down below the setting that we just used to place these, we've got this randomly deselect objects command here. So I can hit that, ask me how many I want to deselect. Let's go with 50%, that's fine. Hit OK, and it's going to deselect a random selection of those. So you can see I had 37 of them selected, and now I have 18, so it's selected half of them. Obviously, it should be 18 and a half, but that doesn't make sense. So it's got 18 selected, and they are randomly selected amongst the ones that are there. So you're not just selecting an entire row or an entire bunch or something like that. We've got a random selection going on, and now that we have those, we can come in here and we can switch those to a different object, and it will go ahead and do that. So now we have a nice bit of variation going on there, and you can do this as many times as you want. So we could go through and we could go find and select here again, say that that contains that name. Oh, whoops. it's that name, or huh. I'm not going to go through and select all of those manually. Now that we have them placed anyway, you can select any more of these and just do the same operation again. So now that we have a 50-50 split of green and pink flaxes, we can again do the same function, randomly deselect. Now we've got half of them selected again, and we can swap these out for something else again. Let's go with these ones. And that will do that. So you can keep going, subdividing those into smaller and smaller groups so that you get a nice proportion of them in whatever way that you want. Obviously, I have been doing this with plants because that's kind of the thing that makes the most sense for doing this sort of thing. But there's essentially all it is doing is interacting with the fill and the object. So you can use this on basically anything that you want to. You don't need to worry about specifically what it is. So if you wanted to, say, place a bunch of chairs inside of a certain area, you can get it to do that. Anything like that, just go ahead and have it place them, and then you can do the random deselection and all of that sort of thing. It will just work on any objects in any sort of location. And if you happen to have a mesh placed there as well, and you select the mesh when you run it, they'll also drop down to the mesh itself. You can also use that part there after the fact. So if we were to come back in here and grab our object tool, let's just get this thing here, place a bunch of them. Oh, my layer again. What layer is it going to this time? Oh, not layer, story. There we go. I'm just going up a story each time, aren't I? That's what it's doing. I should check that before I place them, but you can see we have some trees that are floating up in nowhere now, so we can just select those two and select the mesh, and then go back to CI select, elevate objects to mesh surface, and we'll just drop them down onto that mesh. So again, this is just working on any object at all. It doesn't matter that these ones happen to be from the select library. They can be any objects. Just select them along with the mesh you want them to elevate to, and it will just go and do that once they're already placed. So if you place using the fill method and you want to move those onto a mesh surface after the fact, you can do that with them as well. It will work with any object at all. Alright, the last thing that I wanted to show today was the window and door extras function. So we'll just quickly jump across to that. And what this one does is it is intended to let you put, essentially put curtains or blinds or something onto windows and doors. It also will work with the lintel objects, so if you want to just go around and place lintels, you can do that as well. So we can select, it's a wall frame. Select a bunch of windows and doors. Okay, and we'll go CI select, add window and door extras. That's not going to make sense. Let's not put a tree on. Again, this will work with any object. Some objects will make more sense than others, obviously. I'll go with curtain 1986. Hit OK. You can choose exactly how it wants to be placed, and then hit OK, and it will just go ahead and do that. So it places them in the correct location. Curtains on the outside of the window, obviously not what you will ever want, but you can see what's going on. So we have nicely placed these curtains. So this would be useful for doing shutters, for instance, applying lintels, applying curtains if you were set it to use the inside rather than the outside of the reference line, all that sort of thing. It will just automatically place those objects onto the windows and doors that were selected and set them to the right size and location. So it's just shortcutting that job for you. Again, like with all of the other things we've looked at today, they are simply objects that you place and then they show where they are, but they are not sort of following the windows and doors after that point. They are still normal objects, so you can do whatever you want with them. So that is the option here. CI select, add Durham window extras. So those are the select things that I wanted to look at today. Let me just quickly pop out and see if we've got any questions. Nope. Looks like we don't have any questions today. So thank you very much for attending today, everyone. The recording for this will be available on YouTube within a couple of minutes of this finishing, so if you want to refer to this later, you can do. But thanks for your time, everyone. If you have any questions that you want to see covered in a future version of this webinar, please just let me know on the CI help desk that you have an idea for a thing you want to see covered, and I will see that at some point and get onto it.